welcome to this PIR live event brought to you by Partners in Research. My name is Stacey Joyce. I'm the VROC Program Manager and your host for today. I'd like to welcome Colin Gagich and Dominik Kaukinen, two members of the HitchBOT family Mechatronics Engineering and Management Program at McMaster University. Thank you so much for joining us today, you two.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome all the students who are joining us today by watching the live stream. Please be sure to post your questions on Twitter with the hashtag AskPIR. If you have space, make sure you include your name and your school name or your city so that we can give you a bit of a shout out when we ask your question. We will be monitoring this hashtag throughout the event, and you never know, I might ask your question. So maybe we should get a story of HitchBOT. For any of our viewers who might not have followed along this summer, how did it begin and what was your role in the project?
All right, so back in February, we started having meetings, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to build a robot that was capable of hitchhiking. So we designed a robot that would just sit on the side of the road and just wait for drivers to come by and see it, stop their cars, pick it up, and put it in their cars and then take it with them.
And so basically, Colin started on February as a developer on the project. And about early June is when I came on as kind of a co-developer to kind of help build and finish programming HitchBOT for the launch in late July.
Yeah. So we started construction about when Dominik came on, about early June. And then for about a month and a half, we were going all over the place, buying parts from different stores, assembling it, and then end of July, we dropped it out on the side of the road in Halifax, and then it took about 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks, and it hitchhiked its way all across Canada, ending up in Oregon.
It took about 24 days, and it altogether traveled about 10,000 kilometers, with a lot of side trips.
That's really excellent. So were there any hitches along the way? Pardon the pun. I know HitchBOT stopped for a check-in when it came through Ontario, just to make sure everything was going well.
Yeah, we wanted to someone was saying there was a little bit of a buzzing on the speaker. We wanted to just check it out, and we replaced the cable, but might have been damaged in transit. So just a quick little checkup, and then it was back on the road.
And of course, there's some areas of Canada that much cell coverage, so we would get it connected to basically the cell networks, and we weren't getting feedback from HitchBOT or any information from it for a few days at a time, just because it was in an area without that coverage. Kind of scary.
And yeah, that must have been nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and there was a few times as well where someone would take HitchBOT in the wrong direction. They would drive it backwards, and for a day it would end up kind of backtracking, going to where it had already been, and that was always fun as well.
Yeah, oh, that's funny. So Brenna from Minds in Motion's Girls Club would like to know, how did you create a face for HitchBOT?
Oh, actually, that's a really good question. So we use this thing called an Arduino, and what it does is it kind of tells, it's kind of like a processor that tells things how to behave. So we have these kind of LED screens, and we use this technology to kind of tell them, okay, light up these LEDs at this particular time. So it was, what's a good way to...
We took a bunch of those panels and combined them together to make a bigger screen. It's very similar to like your phone screen, for example, just with the pixels being a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. And you kind of tell it which pixels you want to turn on and which pixels you want to turn off. And you use this Arduino to do that.
So we designed a face, and we designed some emotions as well. So the HitchBOT will wink and blink as well as kind of have little excitement moments where it has a big, I guess, a happier mouth and maybe a little bit of a sad mouth. And, yeah.
So what other emotions did HitchBOT have? We had, kind of resting and sad and really happy. Were there any others?
Well, there were actually some animations on the sides. So there would be a waving flag, HitchBOT guy doing a thumbs up and moving his arms, and also what were the other animations?
There was an animation which was like a shaking thumb, so it would go like that as well. on the side panels of HitchBOT.
And a pulsing heart.
Okay. Very nice. You must have had some fun creating those.
It was a kind of hard challenge because you have a very low resolution on those panels, and they're fairly detailed images. But it was fun.
Good. So Pendo from Calgary wants to know how a HitchBOT could understand what people say.
Okay, so what we did is we taught HitchBOT a very limited vocabulary. So we taught it, about 150 words or so. And what HitchBOT does is it tries to figure out what words you're saying. So we can't understand all words. But when I say HitchBOT, we've trained it to recognize hello and HitchBOT, and then it'll know you're saying hello HitchBOT, and then it'll have a response according to that. Now, if it hears a word that it doesn't know, it tries to make a guess at what you might have said. It's not perfect, but it does an okay job.
And for the longer sentence, it kind of did specific keywords. So it wouldn't recognize your favorite TV show, but it would recognize the words favorite and then TV. And from that, it was able to discern or have an idea of what you were saying.
Okay, excellent. So we have a few different people. Christian on Twitter and Tirana from Calgary want to know, how much did it cost to make HitchBOT?
So it was probably about $1,500 worth of components actually on HitchBOT. So that's like the tablet inside. We have just your normal tablet that you would see. You go to Best Buy, it's the first thing that you'd see on the counter there. Just typical stock tablet. There's some other parts in there, such as what it's made out of, like the plastic containers and all of that. It was overall a very cheap robot. It wasn't designed to be made out of very expensive materials. And it was designed to also be made out of materials you could just kind of find sitting around your house, like pool noodles and boots, like rubber boots.
Well, did one person have the idea for the rubber boots? Following Twitter in the summer, it seemed that the rubber boots were a bit of a thing for HitchBOT.
Yeah. So the professor, Dr. David Smith, on the project, he kind of had this vision of HitchBOT with these rubber boots. And everyone on social media loved the idea of these wellies, this robot with wellies. And originally they were going to be yellow with black stars. And Colin tried to make them because we couldn't find any. Unfortunately, actually, I'll let you tell.
Yeah, so we tried to make these boots. People asked them, right? We kind of let people vote on the boots they wanted. And we couldn't actually find them in store, and we didn't find them where to buy online. So I was out at a little children's, like a shoe store, and I saw these boots which had like license plates and cars and road signs on it, and I thought those are just absolutely perfect. So we ended up using those instead of the yellow with black star boots.
Very nice. So Mr. Jago's class in Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board wants to know, where did the idea come from for this project?
So the idea...
So one of the professors, Dr. David Harris Smith, when he was our age, he did a lot of hitchhiking. So this is probably about 30 years ago or so. He hitchhiked across Canada. So he probably went from the same trip that HitchBOT did, about back and forth across the country 3 or 4 times. So he's human-robot interaction as well as many other things. And he said to himself, what is something that's very crazy that a robot could do, or what's something absurd that a robot could do? And of course, hitchhiking being very close to home for him, he said, why don't we make a hitchhiking robot? And that's how he came up with the idea.
Great. What's my next question here? How about how does HitchBOT move and speak? What kind of technologies did you use? So we talked about the face already with the Arduino boards. What else did you put together to make it all work?
So HitchBOT has an arm which goes like this. It very much like a hitchhiker, and that's its actually only moving part as a robot. And the way that works is there's just a little motor in there that just has a piece of string attached to the arm, and it just pulls the arm up like that. It's very simple, and it's very very basic in that way.
And so the speech, actually, we used software that someone else had already built. It's open source software that anyone can use It's available online for free. And we built that language model that Colin was talking about earlier. And it kind of gave us a way to do that. So we didn't actually build the software from scratch. We used existing open source technology. It's called Pocket Sphinx.
Okay. So have you or other HitchBOT family members won any awards for HitchBOT? I know you were just recently at a conference in California.
Yeah, so we actually won an innovation award. It was a top 30 innovators for it was mostly startups and other companies at the conference. The outlier in being a university research project, and the team ended up winning a innovation award.
Well, congratulations.
Do you know of any other awards?
Thank you. At this moment, I don't know of any other ones. We've been invited to a lot of different conferences. In November, we're going to be at the Ontario Science Centre at an event called Robot Rocks, or Robots Rock, and then also Toronto Mini Maker Fair the following weekend in November. So we're getting very excited for that.
So our viewers can actually come in person and meet you and meet HitchBOT, and ask even more questions if they come up with ones in the next month.
Absolutely. We'll both be there for some of the events, and HitchBOT will be there as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Macy from Calgary wants to know, what is the overall purpose for the project? So we talked about why hitchhiking, which was another question we had, and where the idea came from. But when it all came together, what was the actual purpose? What were you able to get out? What were the results that you were tracking?
So what we originally wanted to look at is we want to study human-robot interaction. And what we mean by that is how do humans interact with robots? We're going to see, in the next few years, we're going to see a lot more robots being in people's houses, doing very simple tasks, maybe caring for elderly and such. But what we're really interested in is, there's a typical question being asked is, can we trust robots? Are robots going to try and hurt us? Are they going to become maybe self-aware? That kind of normal task. We want to kind of flip that question on its head and ask something a little different and say that, can robots trust us? And what we mean by that is, we sent HitchBOT out there, which is a helpless, defenseless robot, and we wanted to see if people would take care of it and if people would listen to it. Like, HitchBOT are getting low, I need to be plugged in. Will someone actually, go plug HitchBOT into their car or into the wall? And that's really what we're looking for here. And additionally, it's kind of also just a project for fun. We want to have something that people can follow, have a great time just getting involved with, and just have some fun.
So did you settle on an answer? Can robots trust humans? Was HitchBOT well taken care of?
Yeah, I think in this case, for sure, HitchBOT was absolutely able to trust humans. It might be interesting to try it in different scenarios, but overall, if the robot's cute enough, people tend to love it.
I guess it helps if the robot is constantly tweeting what happens to it. Nobody wants to be caught on Twitter for being a problem with HitchBOT.
Very true.
Yeah. Was there anything along the way that that struck you as a particularly memorable part of building HitchBOT, or a particular challenge maybe or two along the way?
The silicon thing.
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Yeah, so one interesting problem we had to secure that Arduino I was talking about. We had to secure it inside HitchBOT, and we wanted to glue it. So we tested the glue with something called a multimeter, which some of you, or many of you, probably be familiar with, just to see if it is conductive, if you can take a current, or if current can be drawn across it. And when we tested it, it wasn't conductive. But when we glued it in there, nothing was working. And we realized that we just tested it incorrectly with the multimeter, and it actually was conductive. And so that was a half-hour crisis of us slowly kind of scraping the glue off and trying to remove all the little gooey parts. And it was just our part.
One of the bigger challenges in terms of designing it would be it had to be waterproof, or at least pretty good water resistant, right? Because we wanted it to sit at the side of the road, and if it rains or if even if it hails, we wanted HitchBOT to be okay. So we really had to design it so it had no holes, and if there was holes, we had to have protective screens that didn't let any water through it. So we were really looking out for that as well. That was one of the bigger challenges too.
Did you run through iterations of HitchBOT along the way to solve those problems? Did you kind of try something, find out it didn't work, and ultimately replace it with the components that you did use?
How many Home Depot trips do you think we made?
we made probably over 30 Home Depot trips. So there was a lot of going, buying something, bringing it back, and trying it. Didn't quite work, and then go turn it, that kind of thing. And there was a lot of iteration for sure. But we did buy a lot of parts, and when we saw it in the store, we knew that it was just the right part. We went to a surplus store and we found a cooler, which is actually the body that HitchBOT is made out of, and so it's meant to hold drinks. And the thing about it is it's already watertight because it's meant to hold ice and water. So this was a great find because it already was waterproof.
Yep, and yet you're using it for a completely different purpose than originally intended.
Yeah. Exactly. Was never intended to be used for a robot. But that's a great thing, right? That's what we want to do. Is we want to go out and take parts for something not meant to be used for.
Yeah. Well, to prove that you're never too old to be interested in one of these, my technology coordinator on staff just sent in his own question, and he wanted to know what type of battery HitchBOT had and how long it would last.
So inside we have one of the same batteries we have in there. This is just a typical lithium battery. So it's basically what you would have in your normal tablet, like in this, or just bigger. It's just a bigger version of it, so it just lasts for longer. And then for how long it would last, on a full charge, HitchBOT would last about 8 hours.
And did you find that varied at all over the trip? Was it 8 full hours at the start? Was it still 8 full hours by the end?
Yeah, but what we did find though is that sometimes people didn't want to charge it. It would take probably about the same amount of time, about 8 hours, to charge it. And what we found is that maybe people didn't want HitchBOT to tell the TV. They thought that it was annoying, and they wanted HitchBOT. They wanted a little bit of quiet time.
HitchBOT went to a wedding, actually, and during the speeches, HitchBOT was talking because it was picking up the words that they were saying. And they tried to silence it, I guess, by putting it in a corner and unplugging it. But of course, there's batteries, right? So it was still talking, and I guess it interrupted some heartfelt speeches.
Well, I'm sure that couple will not forget that part of their wedding anytime soon. So I have one question from Twitter from Mel. What are your plans in building robots in the future?
So, sorry, could you repeat that?
Absolutely. Mel on Twitter wants to know, what are your plans for building robots in the future?
Well, we're both studying basically robotics at school, so ideally that's kind of the field we're going to try to get into. But in terms of projects like HitchBOT, we're right now working on a robot to go to art galleries and museums and kind of be a tour guide or make comments on the art that it sees. And
yeah, it's essentially like a little robotic art critic that we're going to send out onto some art galleries in the Ontario GTA area. For in terms of HitchBOT, if we're going to have any other iterations, we don't have plans yet. We would like to see something next summer, maybe. We don't have anything formally planned yet, but we'll hope to do something for sure. Maybe we'll see.
So I just had a question come in about whether or not you would execute robot on purpose to see if people would treat it differently.
Yeah. So part of the design was to make HitchBOT a very cute robot. Absolutely, and that's people sympathize with it. People see it and they see it and they think, oh, that's a helpless robot. It needs my help, and then therefore they do help it.
So do you think
as well? Yeah.
Do you think if you built one that was less cute, would you personally expect the results to be different?
Yeah, there's actually been some research done that our professor kind of pointed out to us, and it showed that people are more receptive to the robot the cuter it is, and we really don't feel like we would have had the same media coverage, social media coverage, or even HitchBOT have as much just general love if it didn't have that kind of appealing cuteness, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah. So how did you manage to balance everything with the HitchBOT project? Because yes, across the country in the summertime, which maybe is not a busy time for you with your studies, but it sounds like this project started, last winter and through the spring. How did you manage to balance your work with the HitchBOT program and school?
It's all about time management and making sure that you're using your time effectively, and as well as the other people on the project also have very busy schedules as well. So we wouldn't have regular meetings as so much. You would have kind of a meeting every other week, and so we really didn't have, like, during the school year there wasn't a lot of time we were putting into it, but over the summer it was pretty much what we were doing full time.
Excellent. So it looks like we're not out of time yet, but is there anything else that you would want to maybe say to our viewers, students who are interested in pursuing mechatronics or robotics, or would be interested in doing something like this in building a robot? Is there any advice you would give them, or words of wisdom that you've learned?
Yeah. So when we were at the conference, Steve Wozniak gave a talk, and he was talking about robotics and technology. And there's a lot of people who are kind of, really technical and want the best technical robot. But what he said at this conference was it should be fun. It should be entertaining. And so I guess my message would be that robotics is fun and it's entertaining. It really is once you get into it. And if it's not, you're doing it wrong.
if a robot is not fun or not entertaining, you're not going to want to use it or interact with it, and that's something that you have to consider as roboticists. In terms of going into robotics, it's a huge expanding field, and it is going to continually be that. And I absolutely love it, and so does Dominik, and I'm sure that if you have an interest in it, you would as well.
Yeah.
So what should students pursue if they wanted to pursue robotics? What should they do to prepare themselves along the way?
Well, definitely sciences, physics, chemistry, to get into the initial program. But interestingly enough, I was actually studying commerce, and I switched into engineering. So in reality, if it's something you decide down the road that you want to do, and you think, oh, I might not have the requirements, you can still do it. And I assure you, because I did it.
I think that's a good note to have. A lot of students, I think, believe that you have to go in a straight line towards your career, and you're proof that even early on, a completely different field can crop up, change your mind, and you can switch gears and be successful. So I think that's all the time we have today. I'd like to say thank you again to all of our live stream viewers and those who tweeted questions today. They were really good ones. And to Colin and Dominik for taking the time to answer those questions and sharing today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I hope everyone enjoyed today's event. To see what's coming up on the PIR live event schedule, visit the Partners in Research website at www.pirweb.org, or follow us on Twitter at PartnersIn, HitchBOT on Twitter as well. And have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everybody.